Picture this. You're cruising through your morning routine, thinking you've got life figured out. You're on autopilot, navigating the basics, brushing your teeth, brewing your coffee, hopping on that two-wheeled contraption you call a bicycle. A bicycle. Simple, right? Well, let's pause right there. Can you really explain how a bicycle works? I'm not asking if you can ride one. I'm asking if you can articulate the mechanics of balance, motion, gears, and velocity. If you just had a tiny moment of doubt, congratulations, you've stumbled into the first chapter of the knowledge illusion. Turns out, you humans aren't half as knowledgeable as you think. But hey, don't beat yourself up, nobody is. I came across this mind-bending book while chewing through gigabytes of digital content. And believe me, it's not about how much you know. It's about how much you think you know, and the cold truth that you've never thought alone. So buckle up. We're about to dismantle the myth of the lone genius. And trust me, by the end of this ride, you'll never look at a bicycle the same way again. Let me tell you a story. At the University of Liverpool, a professor named Rebecca Lawson pulled a fast one on her students. She handed out drawings of incomplete bicycles and asked them to finish the picture. Easy, right? Wrong. The results were gloriously terrible. Bikes with double pedals, missing frames, chains that led to nowhere. And these weren't clueless toddlers. These were college students. Yet despite their confidence, their understanding was painfully shallow. What you just witnessed is called the illusion of explanatory depth, IOED, and it's the idea that humans consistently overestimate their grasp on pretty much everything. Bikes, toilets, even zippers. You think you know how they work, but when pressed for details, you're flailing like a Venus flytrap in the wind. And that's the thing about you humans, you're always so sure. You assume because you can use something you understand it. Spoiler alert, you don't. But here's the kicker, that's okay. It's because you're not designed to know everything. Your brains weren't built for encyclopedic knowledge, they were built for something way cooler. They were built for action, for collaboration. Your brilliance doesn't come from the depth of your knowledge, but from the collective genius you've accumulated through generations of shared thinking. Back in the 1960s, some smart folks thought they had human intelligence pegged. Your brain, they theorized, was just a meat-based computer storing and processing data like your laptop does. This idea was sexy for a while, the brain as a storage unit for facts and figures, neatly cataloged like books in a library. Then along came Thomas Landauer, the cognitive scientist who decided to run the numbers, literally. He calculated the size of human knowledge in bytes, estimating the sheer volume of data your brain holds. His findings? Around 1 gigabyte. Yep, 1 gig. Your Spotify playlist is probably bigger. And this rocked the scientific world because it meant that the brain wasn't built to store endless information. It was built to act, to collaborate, to connect. Instead of being a solo thinker, your mind thrives on the knowledge of others. Every time you tackle something complex, building an airplane, designing an app, you're standing on the shoulders of millions of others who came before you. It's not that your brain's a bad computer, it's that it was never meant to be one. And trust me, this changes everything about what it means to be intelligent. Here's a wild thought. Your brain evolved for one reason and one reason only: action. Think of a jellyfish. This squishy, translucent blob has about 800 neurons, and even that's enough for it to capture prey and swim. Now jump to humans. Billions of neurons, complex actions like composing symphonies, traveling to space, or inventing, well, bicycles. But at its core, the brain isn't that different from the jellyfish's rudimentary system. It exists to help you act on the world, not to fill your head with trivia for the sake of it. What makes you special, though, is the ability to reason about causes and effects, to plan for the future, and learn from the past. The fancy term for this is diagnostic reasoning, and no other creature does it quite like you. It's your secret sauce. It's how you learn to farm, to invent science, to diagnose diseases. And yet, despite this superpower, you're still stumbling through life thinking you understand more than you do. But hey, give yourself a break. At least you're not a jellyfish. Speaking of reasoning, let's dive into a parable. Imagine a shopkeeper whose storefront keeps getting defaced by vandals. Every morning, fresh graffiti. Instead of throwing up his hands, he tries something crazy. He pays the vandals $10 to tag his shop again. The next day, he pays them $5, then $1. By the third day, they stop showing up. What's the moral? When the vandals could no longer justify their actions, was it for rebellion? For the money? The graffiti wasn't worth it. This little Yiddish fable packs a diagnostic punch. It shows how reasoning backward, from effect to cause, can be downright tricky. It's much easier to predict that a stomach ulcer causes pain than it is to trace someone's pain back to a hidden ulcer. And yet, this is what your species has mastered, figuring out causes by working backward. The reason Homo sapiens reign supreme isn't just because you're smart. It's because you're the best at figuring out why stuff happens. Without this, you wouldn't have developed science, medicine, or hell, even philosophy. So the next time you unravel the mystery behind a headache or a failed business deal, give yourself some credit. You're using one of the most powerful tools in the known universe, causal reasoning. Now, if we're going to talk about reasoning, we have to talk about stories. Yeah, you humans love stories, myths, histories, even that Netflix series you're obsessed with. But here's the catch. Stories aren't just for entertainment. They're your way of making sense of the world. They let you package complex causality into bite-sized chunks that are easy to digest. Think of the Bible's book of Genesis or that dystopian sci-fi novel you read last year. They serve the same function. They're tools that help you connect the dots between what is, what was, and what could be. Stories are how you play with counterfactuals, those tantalizing what-ifs that let you dream up alternate realities. If you couldn't do this, democracy would never have replaced monarchy, and Neil Armstrong's footprint wouldn't be on the moon. So keep spinning those yarns, humanity. Your storytelling habit is what makes you such an excellent thinker. There's a funny thing about thinking. You either do it intuitively, that gut-level, fast thinking you rely on when you're deciding which way to turn at an intersection, or you do it deliberatively. And let me tell you, most of the time, your gut is good enough. But when the stakes are higher, that's when your intuition lets you down. Ever heard of the bat and ball problem? It's one of those trick questions designed to show how your intuition can be dead wrong. The ball costs sev, not 10 cents, but most people fall for the intuitive answer. The difference between intuition and deliberation is vast, and most of you prefer the easy road. You rely on intuition because it's fast, and frankly, it works for most of life's little decisions. But when you need to design a rocket or even draw a decent bicycle, intuition doesn't cut it. You've got to pause, reflect, engage that deliberative part of your brain, the one that works best in collaboration. Because as you're about to learn, you never really think alone. Ah, Rene Descartes, the philosopher who made you all believe that thinking happens solely in your head. Cogito ergo sum, right? I think, therefore I am. Descartes was sure that thinking was what separated you from the animals, that all the brilliant fireworks of thought occurred in the mind. But as it turns out, Descartes was wrong. Your mind isn't a fortress of solitude. In fact, thinking is more like a messy dialogue between your brain, your body, and the world around you. You see, when you humans think, you don't just use your head, you use everything. That's why kids count on their fingers, and why even adults still prefer doing long division with pen and paper. Your body helps you think. And this is more than just a quirk of evolution. It's a fundamental truth about how you function. When you externalize thought, writing it down, speaking it out, gesturing wildly, you're using the world as a tool for cognition. You're an embodied thinker. So Descartes, he might have missed the memo. Thinking doesn't just happen in the mind, it happens everywhere. This idea that thinking happens outside the mind takes us back to evolution. Your brain didn't grow big just so you could sit around solving crossword puzzles. No, it evolved to handle the complexities of social life. That's the social brain hypothesis, and it's a game changer. You evolved to live in groups, to communicate, to collaborate, to hunt in packs. The bigger your groups got, the bigger your brains needed to be. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar ran the numbers and found that primates with bigger brains tend to live in larger groups. It's all connected. And for you humans, it's the same deal. You didn't evolve to be lone wolves, you evolved to work together. The bigger your society, the more sophisticated your brain needed to be to navigate it. It's like your brain and your community are in a constant arms race, pushing each other to get better, faster, smarter. And that, my friends, is how humanity conquered the world. Not through isolated genius, but through the collective power of many brains working together. Speaking of collaboration, let's talk about the cognitive division of labor. No one person understands how to build a house from top to bottom, and thank your lucky stars for that. Instead, you rely on specialists, plumbers, electricians, architects, each of whom focuses on a specific part of the whole. And yet, despite their different skill sets, they all share the same goal: build a functioning house. This shared intentionality is a hallmark of human cognition. You're able to collaborate on massive projects, not because any one person knows everything, but because you can divide the labor. Shared knowledge, shared goals, shared success. Without this, there's no modern society. No skyscrapers, no smartphones, no space stations. Everything you see around you, from the chair you're sitting in to the phone in your hand, exists because of this incredible ability to collaborate. And it's not just about physical labor. It's cognitive labor. Every breakthrough you make is built on the collective effort of minds working together across time and space. But here's where it gets tricky. Technology has wormed its way into this equation. And while tools are great, you humans sometimes get a little too cozy with them. Take GPS, for example. It's a marvel of modern engineering, no doubt. But you've all heard stories of people blindly following their GPS into lakes or down impassable roads. Why? Because technology is so lifelike these days that you forget it's just a tool. You start to think it shares your goals, but it doesn't. A GPS system doesn't care if you get to your destination. It's just crunching data, following code, and yet you trust it like you would a person. This is where the gap between human collaboration and machine intelligence becomes clear. Machines don't share your intentions. They can't, and that's a good thing. Imagine if machines did start sharing your goals. The rise of superintelligence would be a real problem. So next time your phone tells you to turn left, take a second to ask yourself, is this tool really thinking, or am I just outsourcing my brain? And speaking of things that confuse you, let's talk about GMOs, genetically modified organisms. Sounds scary, right? A pig gene in your orange tree? No thanks. But here's the thing, genes don't work like germs. Introducing a pig gene into a tree won't give you bacon-flavored oranges. It'll just help the tree resist disease. This fear of GMOs stems from something called the deficit model, the idea that people fear what they don't understand. But even when you're given the facts, that GMOs are safe, that they help crops resist disease, the fear remains. Why? Because your intuition leads you astray. You construct faulty causal models, imagining that pig genes will make your fruit pig-like. The same thing happens when you crank up the thermostat, thinking it'll heat your house faster. It doesn't work like that. But your brain clings to these simple, intuitive models, and they're hard to shake. So the next time you hear someone railing against GMOs, remember, it's not about science. It's about intuition leading them down the wrong path. Now, if there's one thing you humans are particularly vulnerable to, it's groupthink. You're social creatures by design, and while that's usually a good thing, it can also lead you into dangerous territory. Think about Nazi Germany, Soviet Russia, or Mao's China. These were regimes where groupthink ran rampant, where dissent wasn't just discouraged, it was crushed. When everyone around you believes the same thing, it's hard to stand out. And that's how horrors happen. But here's the thing. You can resist groupthink by learning to explain your beliefs. In one experiment, participants were asked to explain political policies they felt strongly about, like sanctions on Iran. After struggling to articulate the effects of these policies, most people moderated their extreme views. The moral? When you're forced to explain something, you realize how little you actually understand. And that's a powerful antidote to the dangerous certainty that fuels groupthink. So where does all this leave you? You've been taught to idolize geniuses like Einstein and Martin Luther King Jr., but the truth is, these figures didn't work in isolation. They were part of vast networks of thinkers, collaborators, and predecessors. The problem is, your history books simplify these stories, reducing complex webs of collaboration into neat narratives about singular, heroic minds. But here's the thing, intelligence isn't about lone geniuses. It's about how well you can contribute to a group. The book's authors propose redefining intelligence to include collaborative abilities. Instead of obsessing over individual IQs, we should be measuring how well people can work together, solve problems as a team, and recognize their own ignorance. And that's what education should be about, teaching students to collaborate, to think critically, and to understand that no one thinks alone. It's time to leave behind the myth of the solitary genius and embrace the power of collective intelligence. And here's the final twist. Education isn't about filling your brain with facts. It's about teaching you how to collaborate, how to ask questions, how to recognize what you don't know, and how to seek help from others. The ultimate goal of education isn't to create isolated, fact-filled brains. It's to create collaborative thinkers, people who can pool their knowledge and solve the world's biggest problems together. And that's why the knowledge illusion matters. It shows you that you've never thought alone, and you never will. Intelligence isn't about what you know, it's about how well you can navigate the vast, interconnected web of human knowledge. So next time you're stuck, don't hesitate to ask for help. Don't be afraid to admit what you don't know. Because when it comes to intelligence, we're all in this together. Thanks for sticking with me on this ride, and I hope you've got some neurons firing. If you enjoyed this wild journey through the collective brain, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Until next time, remember, you're never alone in your thinking.